Someone you love is going to die. And when they do, you'll do something strange. You'll dress them up. You'll put flowers on their body. You'll carry them somewhere specific. You'll say words over them. And you'll do all of this even though they can't hear you. Even though it changes nothing. Most people assume this is a modern ritual, a product of religion or culture or grief psychology. But that's not quite right, because humans have been doing this for at least 300,000 years. Long before language. Long before civilization. Long before we had any word for death at all. In 2015, a team of paleoanthropologists discovered a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star. Deep inside, in a chamber so narrow you had to exhale to squeeze through, they found bones. Hundreds of them. Arranged. Intentional. The species was called Homo naledi. Their brains were 1/3 the size of yours. And they had carried their dead into the dark. Not buried them near a campsite. Not left them where they fell. Carried them through pitch-black passages, over half a mile underground, to a specific chamber, and left them there. Deliberately. This shouldn't have been possible. The cognitive load of planning a burial, understanding that a person is gone, deciding the body matters, choosing a place, making the journey, that's the kind of abstract thinking we assumed required a modern brain. We were wrong. Something that small-brained, something that ancient, already felt that the dead deserved somewhere to go. But burial is only the beginning. Because what our ancestors did with the dead goes much further than laying them down. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, researchers found a Neanderthal grave from roughly 60,000 years ago. Around the body was a dense layer of pollen. Dozens of plant species. Flowers. Someone had brought flowers to a funeral 60,000 years before the first florist. At Sungur, Russia, 34,000 years ago, a child was buried with 5,000 hand-carved ivory beads sewn into their clothing. Thousands of hours of labor. For a child who would never wear them again. At a site in Spain, archaeologists found red ochre, paint, rubbed into human bones that were 430,000 years old. Not the bones of prey. Not a tool. A person. Painted. After death. Before language. Before we had any word for what we were doing or why. So why did we do it? The first answer scientists reached for was practical. Burial keeps disease away from camp. Flowers mask decomposition. Marking graves helps you find ancestors in familiar territory. Clean, logical, evolutionary. And completely insufficient. Because none of that explains 5,000 ivory beads. None of it explains hauling a body half a mile underground in the dark. None of it explains the paint. Anthropologist Thomas Wynne and psychologist Frederick Coolidge spent years studying the cognitive leap required for ritual burial. Their conclusion pointed to something far stranger than hygiene. To treat a dead body as meaningful, to believe it deserves flowers, or beads, or paint, you have to imagine a perspective other than your own. You have to understand that the person who was there is now gone, but that their absence still means something to the living. You have to, in other words, understand death. Not just witness it. Understand it. And to understand death, you have to understand the future. You have to know that one day, you will also be the one in the ground. Every grave, then, is not just about the person in it. It's proof that the person burying them already knew they would die too. Death rituals weren't born from grief. They were born from self-awareness. But here's the part nobody talks about. And it's the strangest part of all. We don't just bury the dead. We've always talked to them. In cultures across every continent on Earth, cultures with no contact with each other, separated by oceans and ice ages and thousands of years, people speak to their dead. They leave food. They set out clothing. They ask questions and wait for answers in dreams. The ancient Egyptians wrote letters to their deceased relatives, asking for help with legal disputes and family conflicts. Actual letters. On pottery. Left at graves. The ancient Romans had a specific festival, the Parentalia, where families gathered at tombs and fed their ancestors through pipes drilled directly into the grave. Ancient Chinese ancestor worship. Mexican Dia de los Muertos. Japanese Obon. Norse ancestor veneration. All of them, independently, arrived at the same conclusion. The dead are still here. They still need things. They can still help. For a long time, anthropologists treated this as superstition, primitive thinking, pre-scientific comfort, and completely insufficient. But psychologists studying grief in the 21st century found something unexpected. People who maintain what researchers call continuing bonds with the dead, who talk to them, who keep objects that represent them, who mentally consult them when making decisions, those people grieve better. They recover faster. They report higher well-being. They feel less alone. The superstition turns out to be adaptive. It works. Which raises an uncomfortable question. What if every culture on Earth, for 300,000 years, wasn't wrong? What if the relationship doesn't end at death? Not spiritually, but neurologically, psychologically, socially? The dead live inside the living. In memory, in habit, in the way you hold a fork the way your grandmother did, in the V. But here's the plot twist. Here's the thing that changes everything. We've always assumed that death rituals were for the dead. They're not. The flowers decompose. The beads stay in the ground. The letters on pottery are never answered. None of it reaches the person you buried. But all of it reaches you. When Homo naledi carried a body into the dark, they weren't helping the dead person. They were doing something far more radical. They were telling themselves a story about what a person is worth. A body requires effort to carry. Flowers require time to pick. Beads require months to carve. Paint requires someone to decide that the dead deserve color. Every funeral in human history has been, at its core, a community saying out loud, this person mattered. And if they mattered, so do you. And if you matter, so do I. Death rituals aren't grief. They're social contracts. They are the oldest answer to the oldest question. What are we worth? And our ancestors answered it the only way they could. They picked up a body. They carried it somewhere. They painted the bones red. Not for the dead. For everyone still alive who is watching. And we've been doing it ever since.